Chapter 2 of Baby Moll by Lee Farris. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2. Elaine was in better spirits by the time we arrived at her home. I unloaded the car, carried the beach towels and picnic basket to the big front porch of the R&L house, overlooking the bay.
"Don't forget the concert tonight," she reminded me. "You've got only an hour to get ready."
I kissed her cheek lightly. "I'll go over to the store now and change. Clean the fish in the morning." I drove away from the house and headed cross town. On the way, I passed through the neighborhood where our house had recently been completed. It was dark now, waiting for Mrs. Mallory to bring light and warmth to the rooms. Soon. My breath caught a little at the thought. It had been a damned long time, but she had been worth waiting for. My store was south on the highway, convenient for both the freshwater fisherman of the backcountry canals and the angler who favors the tide flats and open sea. I parked in front of the small building and paused under the pulsing neon sign that identified the place as the angler shop to find the door key. Locating in this section had cost me practically all my savings, but in 2 years the investment had paid off in a new house. Thinking about this, I looked self-consciously down the street, but there were no cars parked nearby. My only company was 2 teenage girls in Bermuda shorts, standing in front of a theater half a block away. I grimaced at my momentary nervousness and unlocked the door. I put away a couple of lures I had been experimenting with that morning and hunted up an ice chest. While I was getting it from a shelf behind the display case, the door opened. It didn't close right away, and I had the feeling that someone held it open and watched me. Sweat rolled down my cheek. It was hot in the store without the air conditioner on. There was a loaded .38 revolver in a holster beneath the cash register, but it was 10 steps away. I could feel the muscles of my back tightening. I tried not to think about the gun. "You went fishing today," he said. "I couldn't find you." I took the ice chest from the shelf, straightened up and turned around, setting the chest carefully on the glass top of the display case. A drop of perspiration fell from my chin, splashing on the glass. I was conscious of my heart beating too fast. "You ever been shot, Rudy?" I said harshly. He was a stocky man with too much weight on his bones now. He wore a wrinkled light blue cord suit, a tired gray hat pushed back on his head. His hair was graying, oiled, long around the ears, thinning on top. He watched me steadily, warily, from behind a large pair of glasses, the clear plastic frames yellowed by the sun. There was a crack at the corner of one lens. His lips stretched wide in a humorless smile. "Lots of times." "You know better than to come on me like that. You might have picked up another one." A brown insect with buzzing wings whirled in the door, hovered near his ear, soared away. He chewed steadily on the wood end of a match. "You wasn't nowhere near a gun," he said, then added defensively as if he hadn't considered the possibility before. "And I was as close as my hip pocket." "Finish coming in," I told him, and shut the door. I walked around the display case and turned on the air conditioner at the back of the store. Rudy Mask sat in a chair and looked curiously about the store, sighed as the cold air from the big carrier unit reached him. "So this is what you bought with Macy's money," he said. I stood watching him. "Money I earned, Rudy," I said. He nodded, taking in the stuffed sailfish, the racks of slender rods. He knew nothing about fishing, cared less. He was an old hoodlum, an aging tough guy, his body scarred from knives and an occasional heel bullet wound. Not many. You don't take many and keep walking around. His face and ears were worn and lined from the back alley poundings, the careless brawls and dives in every kind of town. His eyes had seen too many women, in brothels and stinking chicken coops when things were bad, in magnificent apartments that smelled of strange flowers and perfume, and the sweet flesh of $100 girls when things were fabulously good. His fingers had held too much whiskey, and they weren't steady. It had been 6.5 years since I had seen him, and he didn't belong here. I didn't want to see him now. I had left his kind of life one day when the stink of it had clutched at my stomach and made sleep impossible. In the last months I had gradually forgotten there was always a loaded gun pointed at my head wherever I went. Rudy was a reminder that the trigger could be pulled at any time. "What are you doing in Orange Bay?" I asked him. "Macy wants you." He took the chewed match from his mouth, glanced at it, tossed it on the floor. He looked for another in his coat pocket. "Somebody's going to kill him," he said, and coughed. Then it was quiet in the store except for the air conditioner. "Is that supposed to make me unhappy?" I said. "Well, Jesus," Rudy said, surprised. "Who's trying to kill him and why would I be interested?" I said, impatient to know what he was getting at. He shook his head. "Macy doesn't know. It's not a syndicate order." "What does he know?" Rudy shifted his weight in the chair. "You remember the old gang, Macy's first gang back in the 30s? I started with Macy then after I drifted out of Kansas City. There were 4 others besides me, Pete. Clemente and Porter and Tenier and Lundquist. Did Macy ever tell you what racket we had then?" "Shakedown? Protection?" "It was sweet. We lined up whole neighborhoods. Once in a while a customer wouldn't buy. We ran into a tailor like that. He had a scrubby little shop and lived upstairs with Fat Mama and 2-3 kiddies. Little old guy with a bent back and thick glasses. I remember him kind of well. He didn't need the protection. His place burned one night. It was tough. So quick he didn't have time to get himself and Fat Mama and the kiddies out. We lost a client, but the other merchants on the block came through in a hurry." "I never heard about it," I said grimly. Macy's been hearing about it lately. In the last 3 years. Every time one of the old gang was knocked off, he got a clipping in the mail. An old yellow newspaper clipping about the fire that burned the tailor and his family, along with another story about how each one of the boys got it. Porter was the first, in an alley in Hammond, Indiana, about 3 years ago. Ripped apart with a big knife. There was maybe a couple of paragraphs in the local paper, and nobody would have known about it except Macy got the story a few days later cut from the paper, and the first clipping about the fire. Who else is dead?" Rudy slicked back his dirty hair, pressed a hand against his abdomen. "Stomach's kind of wacky lately," he explained apologetically. He took a couple of hard breaths. "Clemente went back to Cuba after the war. I think it was about 7 months after Porter was killed that Macy got the story about Clemente. In Spanish, yet. His woman found him hung upside down in some Havana crib, slit open from throat to groin." "Another clipping about the fire with this newspaper story?" "Right. Let's see. It was Tenier next. New Orleans this time. Throat cut and belly opened about a year after Clemente. 3 weeks ago, Lundquist was knifed in an old folks' home outside of Tampa." "Any message with these clippings? Some kind of threat?" "Hell no. It's clear enough, ain't it?" "Yeah? Macy's getting shook about all this?" Not too much, but he wants to get this thing off his back. He's got other problems. He wants you to find the guy with the knife, who's sending him these newspaper stories." "How about you, Rudy?" I said. "You getting worried?" He rubbed the back of his hand across his lumpy chin. His eyes weren't happy. He was beginning to look like an old man. The guy sticks with it," he said, his voice rasping. "It takes a lot of patience to hunt down men like he does. And a lot of hate to use a knife like that." "Yeah," Rudy said. He squirmed in the chair. I packed the ice chest with ice from the refrigerator, put the fish inside. It was time for me to pick Elaine up. She would begin to wonder what was keeping me. I thought of the menace of Rudy Mask and Macy Barr, who should have been untouchable but was feeling the pressure from a slow and patient killer. I wondered if I was going to be able to say no to Macy again and get away with it. Without looking at Rudy, I said, "Tell Macy to get another boy. I made a clean break. I wanted to stay clean." Rudy was silent. "If he told you to bring me whether I wanted to come or not, forget that too," I told him. "Well, he didn't figure you'd come back because you loved him so much," Rudy said. "So he wanted me to remind you of something. About what a nice girl you're engaged to." I turned my jaw tight with rage. Rudy wasn't gloating. He looked at me soberly. "He wouldn't hurt your girl," Rudy said. "He wouldn't have somebody brought in to hurt her and leave her in an alley without her clothes like he's done to others. He just said he'd take a letter you wrote a long time ago and wrap it up and send it to her so she could read it." He was watching me closely. He must have seen what happened to my eyes because he grunted, satisfied, and walked away, poking his bad teeth with the end of a match. No, Macy wouldn't hurt Elaine. Not in the old manner, breaking bones and faces. Once in a while, this was the best way, the only way to make sure a warning was obeyed, to maintain control of the uncertain human element in a sprawling illicit operation. But through the years, Macy had learned better and safer ways of control. How to bring a man to his knees through the gentle pressure of his own mistakes. How to hit a man through others close to him so that it is more painful than any beating. The letter would tell Elaine what I had never told her, about a wife named Jean, whose home for 5 years had been an institution in New York State, until in a lucid moment some time ago she had slashed herself and bled to death. It would be the beginning of ruin. Maybe Elaine could take it, but if her mother and father found out, they weren't sure of me anyway, and if they should start looking into my past, I was through. Rudy stood near the front window watching the cars go by in the street, jingling change in his pocket. I heard the telephone and picked up the receiver without thinking about it.
"Pete," Elaine said cheerfully, "you break your leg or something?"
"I was just leaving," I said thickly. "Be right over."
"Nothing wrong, is there?"
"No, of course not. See you in a little while." I put the receiver down. Rudy yawned. "We'll have to get moving. Macy was expecting us today." "You bastard," I said. "I'm sorry, Pete," he said, sounding as if he really meant it. End of chapter 2.